Success rarely announces its downfall. It doesn't arrive with thunder or warning signs flashing in the distance. Instead, it fades the way daylight slips into dusk, quietly enough that you don't notice until the shadows are already long. And that is how greed begins its work. Not as a monster, not as a villain, but as a whisper that tells you what you already want to hear. That you deserve more. That stopping now would mean settling. That hunger is proof you're still alive. And at first, there is nothing wrong with wanting better, nothing dangerous about ambition, because ambition builds nations, feeds families, and pulls ordinary people out of difficult beginnings. But somewhere along the road from striving to succeeding, a line appears, invisible yet decisive. And the tragedy is that most people cross it without realizing they've crossed anything at all. Because greed does not feel heavy in the beginning. It feels light, exciting, energizing. It feels like momentum. And when success starts to arrive, when the bills stop worrying you, when your name starts carrying weight, when doors open before you knock, it becomes easy to believe that the rules that once guided you were meant only for the climb, not for the height. And that is where the foundation begins to crack. Because success tests character far more than struggle ever could. Struggle teaches humility by force, but success offers temptation by choice. And choice is where the real story is written. I've watched people who built their lives with discipline slowly trade it for indulgence. People who once valued trust begin to treat others as tools. People who once knew the price of hard work begin to believe they are owed the world simply for existing. And none of this happens overnight. It happens one decision at a time, one justification at a time, one rationalization layered gently on top of another, until the original values are buried beneath comfort and convenience. And greed thrives in comfort, because comfort dulls awareness. It makes you forget how fragile everything truly is. It convinces you that what you have now will always be there tomorrow. And that illusion is powerful. Powerful enough to make smart people reckless and good people careless. Because when success starts to feel permanent, gratitude slowly turns into entitlement, and entitlement is greed's favorite doorway. Once entitlement settles in, you stop asking, "Is this right?" and start asking, "Why not me?" You stop seeing limits as protection and start seeing them as obstacles meant for others. And at that point, success stops being something you steward and becomes something you consume. And consumption unchecked always demands more money, more recognition, more control, more validation, and the hunger never quiets. Because greed is not about having, it is about fearing loss. It is about the terror of going back to who you once were. And that fear drives people to make choices that slowly dismantle everything they built. Relationships become transactional, loyalty becomes conditional, truth becomes flexible, and integrity becomes expensive. And so it is quietly negotiated away, not in one bold betrayal, but in 1,000 small compromises that seem harmless on their own, until one day the structure you trusted collapses under its own weight, and you wonder how it happened. How something that started with dreams and effort ended with isolation and regret. And the answer is almost always the same. Greed replaced purpose, accumulation replaced meaning, and success lost its anchor, because real success is grounded in balance. It requires restraint as much as drive, wisdom as much as ambition, but greed rejects balance. It leans forward endlessly, always reaching, never resting. And that imbalance eventually shows in exhaustion, in broken trust, in decisions made too quickly and justified too easily. And while the world may continue to applaud for a while, applause is not proof of stability. Noise is not the same as support. And when the applause fades, as it always does, what remains is the truth you built beneath it. And if that truth was hollowed out by greed, there is nothing left to stand on, no strength to fall back on. And the ruin that follows does not come from outside forces. It comes from within. From a system stretched too far. From a character asked to support a weight it was never trained to carry. Because success without self-mastery is fragile. And greed is the absence of self-mastery. It is desire without discipline. Hunger without boundaries. And no matter how high you climb, no matter how impressive the view, a climb without balance always ends the same way. Not with triumph, but with a fall that feels sudden only because the warning signs were ignored. And that is the quiet lesson hidden inside so many stories of success turned to ruin, that what destroys people is rarely failure. It is excess. It is forgetting that strength is not proven by how much you can take, but by how much you can hold without losing who you are. What most people don't realize is that greed doesn't just ruin success, it rewrites memory. It changes how a life is remembered long after the applause fades. Because legacy is not built in moments of gain, it is revealed in moments of restraint. And the saddest stories are not about those who failed while trying, but those who succeeded and lost themselves in the process. Because success magnifies consequence. Every choice made at the top echoes louder than it ever did at the bottom. And when greed is allowed to steer those choices, the echoes become warnings instead of inspiration. I've seen legacies shrink while bank accounts grew, seen names once spoken with admiration slowly become cautionary tales, because greed does something subtle and devastating. It convinces people that their value is tied to expansion, that slowing down is weakness, that generosity is risky, that humility is outdated. And once that belief takes root, everything becomes measured in profit and loss, including people, including time, including conscience. And that is when success quietly transforms into a prison, because now you are no longer free to choose what is right. You are compelled to protect what you have, even if it costs you who you are. And the irony is that the more you protect through greed, the more fragile everything becomes. Relationships thin out because trust cannot survive calculation. Peace disappears because fear of loss never sleeps. And purpose erodes because meaning cannot coexist with endless accumulation. And yet many people keep going, not because they are happy, but because they are afraid to stop, afraid to confront the question they've been avoiding for years. The question success eventually asks everyone. Who are you when enough is already in your hands? And that question terrifies those who built their identity on wanting more, because answering it requires honesty, and honesty demands surrender. Surrender of ego, surrender of illusion, surrender of the belief that control equals security, and that surrender feels like loss to a greedy mind, even though it is the beginning of freedom. Because the truth is this: strength is not proven by domination. It is proven by discipline, by knowing when to walk away from excess, by choosing long-term meaning over short-term gain. And the people who understand this are the ones who age with dignity, who sleep peacefully at night, who are remembered not just for what they built, but for how they treated others while building it. Because legacy is not what you leave behind materially, it is what remains alive in the people you touched, the principles you modeled, the boundaries you honored. And greed, unchecked, poisons legacy at its root. It leaves behind wealth with no warmth, influence with no respect, success with no soul, and the world may still say your name, but it will not speak it with gratitude. It will speak it with warning. And that is a heavy price to pay for never learning the difference between ambition and excess. Because ambition asks, how can I grow while staying aligned? While greed asks, how much can I take before I'm stopped? And one builds civilizations while the other burns bridges. And the moment a person confuses the two, the countdown to ruin begins. Slowly at first, then all at once. Because life has a way of restoring balance. It does not punish greed immediately. It allows it to grow, to expose itself, to stretch its reach until the imbalance can no longer be ignored. And when correction comes, it is rarely gentle, because lessons delayed are lessons intensified. And the older we get, the fewer chances we are given to relearn them, which is why reflection matters, especially for those walking the path of strength. Because real strength is not loud. It is not desperate. It does not need to prove itself by accumulation. Real strength is quiet, measured, and rooted. It knows that the purpose of success is not to escape humility, but to practice it at a higher level, to give more, to protect more, to guide more wisely. And when success is carried with that mindset, it becomes a blessing instead of a burden, a foundation instead of a trap. But when greed takes the wheel, success becomes unstable. It accelerates without direction, consumes without satisfaction, and leaves destruction where fulfillment should have lived. And here's where the lesson turns personal, because this is not a story about distant figures or famous names. It is a mirror held up to anyone still climbing, still striving, still chasing something better. And the question is not whether you will succeed. The question is who you will become if you do. Whether your strength will deepen or fracture. Whether your values will expand or erode. Whether your success will serve your life or demand it as payment. And the answer is decided long before the peak is reached. It is decided in the small choices, the unseen moments, the decisions that never make headlines. Because greed does not begin at the top, it begins in the heart, and discipline begins there too. And this is where the path of strength offers a different ending, one where success does not turn into ruin, one where growth is matched with gratitude, where ambition walks alongside restraint, where legacy is built intentionally instead of accidentally. And that path requires courage, not the courage to take more, but the courage to say enough, to pause, to reflect, to realign, to remember why you started, who helped you, and what truly matters when the noise fades. Because in the end, when the lights dim and the world grows quiet, it will not ask how much you accumulated. It will ask how much you stood for, how many people felt stronger because you existed, how much peace you preserved within yourself. And that is the measurement that endures. That is the strength that lasts. And if you're listening to this right now, still building, still striving, still chasing success, let this be the moment you choose mastery over hunger, purpose over excess, meaning over more. Because the strongest path is not the one that reaches highest at any cost. It is the one that reaches far without losing its soul. And if this message resonated with you, if it made you pause, reflect, or see your journey more clearly, then take a moment to strengthen this path together. Like the video, subscribe to Daily Path to Strength, and share this message with someone who needs the reminder that true success is not measured by what you gain, but by what you never lose along the way.